Today, we are diving into a really fascinating ancient text that offers a completely different way of looking at our sky. It makes a claim about the sun and the moon that honestly challenges pretty much everything we think we know. We're going to be exploring the cosmology of the Book of Enoch. So, just for a second, forget everything you learned in astronomy class. Just ask yourself this question: what if the sun and the moon were exactly the same size? Like, precisely. This isn't just a random thought experiment. It's the absolute central claim of the text we're digging into today. So here's how we're going to break this all down. We'll start with where this cosmic claim even comes from. Then we'll look at the text's own proof for why the sun and moon are equal. After that, we'll see how it explains their different movements and piece together this picture of a structured sky clock. And finally, we'll look at the big conclusion the source material draws from all this. Okay, so our journey starts in a very specific part of the Book of Enoch. It's called the Book of Luminaries. And according to the text, this is where the angel Uriel is personally giving Enoch the rundown on how the heavens work.
Now, for anyone who's not familiar, the Book of Enoch is this ancient religious text. It's not in most modern Bibles, but its ideas were huge back in the day, really influential in early Jewish and Christian thought. It gives us this incredible window into how people saw the world thousands of years ago.
All right, let's get to the core of the argument. How does this text possibly support the idea that the sun and the moon are the same size? Well, the thing is, it doesn't just hint at it, it says it, flat out. And here it is, the first big piece of evidence, coming from chapter 72. As for their size, both the sun and the moon are equal. Their paths are equal. I mean, you can't get much more direct than that. There's really no ambiguity there at all.
And this is a point our source really hammers home. The Book of Enoch isn't trying to be poetic or metaphorical here. The language is presented as just incredibly blunt, incredibly straightforward.
And just in case you missed it, the text doubles down in the very next chapter. It says the moon is equal to the sun, not just in size, but also in the vision of their light. This repetition just shows you how absolutely fundamental this idea is to Enoch's entire model of the cosmos.
So what about the moon's light, right? The text doesn't claim the moon is making its own light. No, instead, it describes this process of transference, where light is basically given from the sun to the moon, and the moon then acts kind of like a giant mirror in the sky. Okay, so this brings up a pretty obvious question. If they're the same size, how does this worldview account for the fact that they move so differently across the sky? Well, this next section is all about reconciling their size with their separate journeys.
And this slide really lays out the explanation perfectly. According to the text, it's simple. The sun on the left, it just travels a longer path. The moon on the right travels a shorter path. The key here is that a different journey doesn't mean a different physical size.
So the whole thing really just boils down to this: same size, different path. The text sticks to its core claim, equal size, by separating how big something is from how it moves. You know, two cars can be the exact same model but take totally different routes. It's a simple logic, and inside its own system, it's totally consistent. So now, let's zoom out. How do all these pieces fit into a bigger picture? How did the author of Enoch actually see the cosmos? Well, it wasn't some huge empty space. It was seen as a highly structured, almost mechanical machine. This slide kind of gives you the blueprint. Just imagine a solid, fixed dome over your head, the firmament. And in that dome, there are 6 gates on the east side for things to rise, and 6 gates on the west for them to set. The sun and moon travel on these fixed, totally predictable paths through the gates, almost like giant gears in a massive celestial clock.
And it's really important to put this into historical context. Our source makes a point to say that this model is way older than the Greek and Roman ones we're more familiar with, let alone modern science from NASA. And a key argument is that within its own rules, this system is actually really logical and consistent with itself.
And that brings us to our final section. This is where we look at the source material's own big summary of this cosmology, which it presents as the straight truth, according to the Book of Enoch.
So let's do a quick recap of the core claims our source pulls from this text. Number 1, the sun and moon are the same size. 2, the moon's light is just reflected light from the sun. 3, they move on fixed tracks in a structured system. 4, their cycles are all mathematical and ordered. And finally, according to the source's analysis, this whole model is presented as the reason for things like eclipses and why ancient calendars worked. And ultimately, the source material we've been walking through boils its entire analysis down to this one definitive statement. It frames this as the final takeaway from its reading of this ancient book.
And that leaves us with a bigger question to chew on. Regardless of what we believe about the cosmos today, looking at a system like the one in the Book of Enoch really forces you to ask, how do these ancient texts and the different ways people interpret them continue to shape how we see the universe? It's definitely something to think about.